All right, welcome to the deep dive. This time, you guys sent over something super interesting.
Ooh, what is it?
It's Jeff Anderson's Optimum Anabolics. You know, like the whole manual.
Yeah, okay. I'm familiar with that one. A bit of a classic.
Yeah, and the thing is, those of you listening sent it in because you really want to understand, like, the core principles,
It is
right?
nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty of how to maximize, your natural ability to pack on muscle.
Like, what's actually going to work?
Yeah, exactly. And that's all based on, what Anderson lays out in this manual. So we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to clear up some of the like the misunderstandings,
Right, because there's a lot of, like, bro science out there.
Oh yeah, so much bro science in the bodybuilding world. It's been around for too long.
Definitely. Time to cut through the noise.
Okay, so let's unpack this. You know how it goes, right? You start hitting the gym, you're super motivated, you're ready for this transformation.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. And then what happens? You hit a wall.
You plateau. It's so frustrating.
You're putting in the work, you're maybe like following the advice you hear around the gym or what you read in like those fitness magazines. You might even be spending a ton on all the latest supplements, right?
Happens to the best of us.
And that's where the frustration really kicks in. Because you see these, impressive physiques, those ripped guys in the magazines.
And ones who are supposedly, like, all natural. Right.
Yeah.
Just using their special routines and supplements.
Exactly. And Anderson really calls this out. He points out that a lot of these physiques are actually the result of, anabolic steroids.
And that's just the protein powder they're trying to sell you.
Exactly. So that creates this, like, really misleading impression for anyone who's, training naturally.
Yeah, because what works for someone on steroids, like the intensity they can handle, the volume of training, their recovery, it's just not the same for someone who's not using them.
Totally. And the supplement industry itself, it's huge. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar industry.
And they thrive on that desire for quick results, the magic pill.
Yeah, the quick fix. And Anderson even talks about this, what he calls the 6-month rule. Have you heard of this?
I think so. Fill me in.
Okay, so it's basically this idea that people, they get all gung-ho, they start working out, they buy all the supplements they think they need, and then after about 6 months, if they don't see the amazing progress they were hoping for, they just get discouraged.
And they quit.
They quit.
Yeah.
It's a cycle, right?
It keeps the supplement companies happy and the gyms full, but the individual is left feeling like a failure.
And what's even crazier, Anderson points out that some of those bodybuilding magazines actually own the supplement companies they're featuring.
Oh, wow. Talk about a conflict of interest.
Right. So you can't really trust that their advice is, like, totally unbiased,
It makes it so much harder to find genuinely helpful advice. It's all about selling products, not necessarily what's actually going to help you build muscle naturally.
Okay, so where do we go from here? How do we find reliable information? Well, according to Anderson, the key is understanding and applying what he calls the 8 anabolic factors.
These are like the pillars of natural muscle growth.
Yeah, and he says if you really get these right, you can push past what you thought was your, like, natural limit.
Like breaking through a genetic ceiling. That's exciting.
Right. So let's just quickly list them off, and then we'll dive deeper into each one. All right, so we've got hyperadaptive cycling, body part training frequency, training session length, exercise selection and form, number of repetitions and weight, repetition speed, rest cycles, and, of course, diet.
That covers a lot of ground. It's pretty comprehensive.
It is. It's not just about, like, lifting heavy weights. It's about understanding how all these pieces fit together.
Creating the perfect environment for muscle growth.
Okay, so let's start with that first one, hyperadaptive cycling. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's all about how your body naturally adapts to stress. Whether it's too much stress or too little, your body's always trying to maintain this balance, this homeostasis.
So, like, if you do the same workout every week, your body just gets used to it.
Pretty much. It adapts, and you stop seeing those gains. So we need to find a way to, like, trick the body a little bit.
So keep it guessing.
Exactly. That's where hyperadaptation comes in.
Okay, so how does this work? What kind of cycles are we talking about?
Anderson outlines a 3-week progressive load phase. So you gradually increase the stress on your muscles. Maybe you lift a little heavier each week, do a few more reps, or shorten your rest periods.
So you're pushing yourself harder and harder. Got it.
Then, for the next 3 weeks, you switch to a hyperadaptive cycle. You actually reduce the stress.
So after pushing hard, you back off a bit.
Yep. And the idea is, during that overload phase, your body's primed for growth. It's expecting things to keep getting tougher. But then, when you suddenly ease up, it's caught off guard.
So it overcompensates.
Exactly. It builds more muscle than it needs, just in case you decide to hit it hard again.
Like it's prepping for the next challenge.
That's a good way to put it. Now, this next part's a little controversial. It's called protein deprivation cycling.
Okay, this sounds kind of intense.
It is. Basically, every 6 weeks, you have a 3-week period where you drastically reduce your protein intake. We're talking like 30 grams a day.
That's like way less than what most bodybuilders would recommend.
Right. It goes against the conventional wisdom. But the theory is when your body is trying to repair muscle damage, but it doesn't have enough protein, it sends out a signal to ramp up hormone production.
So you're basically forcing your body to produce more testosterone, growth hormone, all those muscle-building hormones.
Exactly. Then, when you reintroduce higher protein levels, your body is like supercharged and ready to grow.
I can see why that's controversial. Sounds like you really need to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. And remember, the manual itself has a disclaimer. It's the author's opinion, not medical advice.
Right. Always consult with your doctor before making any drastic changes to your diet.
Absolutely. But the underlying principle, this idea of creating a temporary shortage to trigger a bigger response later, that aligns with the whole hyperadaptation idea.
Okay, so he's got this whole 24-week plan laid out, right?
Yeah. It's a detailed schedule for how you alternate these cycles of training and protein intake. It's definitely a planned approach, not random at all.
Okay, so moving on to factor 2, body part training frequency. Now, I think a lot of people get stuck in the mindset that they have to work each muscle group multiple times a week.
More is better, right? That's the common belief.
But Anderson actually argues against that.
He points out that when you lift weights, you're essentially causing tiny tears in the muscle fibers.
In a controlled way, of course.
Right. It's a good kind of damage.
Yeah.
But those muscles need time to repair and grow stronger, and that takes time.
He says it takes about 3 days for the muscle breakdown and another 3 to 4 days for the recovery and growth after a really intense workout.
So that's about a week total before that muscle group is fully recovered and ready to be hit again.
So if you work your chest 3 times a week, you're not necessarily going to get 3 times the growth.
You might actually be slowing down your progress. You could even be overtraining those muscles, preventing them from fully recovering.
So he recommends hitting each body part with a primary focus just once a week.
That's generally the sweet spot.
And he suggests a specific training split: shoulders, arms, abs, legs, back, chest abs, and then either an off day or a HIIT workout. That way, you're working every major muscle group once a week.
You can adjust the days to fit your schedule, but that order ensures enough rest between workouts for each specific area.
Which is important because you don't want to train, say, chest on Monday and then shoulders on Tuesday, because they're both involved in pushing movements, right?
Right, you want to give those related muscle groups enough time to recover.
He even mentions that if you miss a workout, you can make it up on that 6th or 7th day.
So there's flexibility built in. But the key takeaway here is that you have to respect your body's natural recovery time. More is not always better.
All right, let's talk about factor 3, training session length. We've all seen those guys who seem to practically live at the gym, those marathon workout sessions.
Yeah, but Anderson warns against that, especially for natural lifters.
He says you shouldn't try to copy the routines of professional bodybuilders who might be using drugs to enhance their recovery.
And he makes a really interesting point about testosterone levels.
Yeah, he says they can drop by up to 80% after just 60 minutes of exercise.
That's a huge drop. And testosterone is crucial for building muscle.
So longer workouts could actually be sabotaging your gains?
Potentially, yeah. Plus, they can lead to burnout, both physically and mentally.
So his rule is 60 minutes or less in the gym. And he's serious about this. He says you should leave even if you haven't finished your planned workout.
It might seem counterintuitive, but the goal is to maximize your hormonal environment for muscle growth. After that hour mark, you might be doing more harm than good.
So how do you get a really effective workout in such a short time?
That's where supersets come in.
Okay, tell me more about supersets.
Basically, you do 2 exercises back to back, targeting opposing muscle groups, like biceps and triceps, or chest and back.
So you're working one muscle group while the other one rests.
Yeah, it's called active recovery, and it allows you to fit more work into that 60-minute window.
He also mentions using supersets of isolation exercises and compound exercises to pre-exhaust larger muscle groups.
Right, so you might start with an isolation exercise, like dumbbell flies for your chest, to really fatigue those muscles directly. Then you immediately follow with a compound exercise, like bench press, which works your chest, triceps, and shoulders all together. Because your chest is already tired, it gets even more stimulation during the bench press.
Interesting. So you're getting more bang for your buck with those compound movements.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not necessarily longer.
Okay, let's move on to factor 4. Exercise selection and form. I mean, there are so many different exercises out there, and gyms are full of fancy machines these days.
It can be overwhelming. People are always asking, what are the best exercises?
Yeah, and Anderson actually addresses this whole fascination with machines. He says that they're not necessarily better for muscle growth just because they offer better isolation,
He argues that free weights, exercises that involve your whole body, actually trigger a stronger response from your central nervous system.
which is important for recovery and growth,
Yeah.
right?
He compares it to like a riot versus an isolated fight.
Yeah.
Your body responds more intensely to a bigger, more comprehensive challenge.
Okay, I like that analogy.
So things like squats, deadlifts, bench press, those are going to be more effective overall than just doing isolation exercises on machines.
He also emphasizes the importance of using a full range of motion during exercises.
Yeah, don't cheat yourself by using partial reps. You want to make sure you're working the muscle through its full range to stimulate all the fibers.
And then there's the whole issue of proper form.
Oh, that's huge. He stresses this over and over again. It can make or break your progress.
He says it's not about how much weight you can lift if your form is sloppy.
You're just using momentum, and you're not actually making your muscles work. He even gives this little trick for bicep curls.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
He says to fully extend your triceps at the bottom of the movement. That ensures you're getting a complete stretch in your biceps.
Makes sense. You're engaging the opposing muscle to maximize the stretch.
He also talks about the power of visualization.
So, like, mentally picturing your muscles growing while you're working out.
Yeah, it might sound a bit woo-woo, but focusing on the muscles you're working can actually enhance your mind-muscle connection.
So you're more aware of the muscles you're trying to target.
Exactly. It helps you recruit those fibers more effectively.
So choose a weight that lets you do your reps with good form through a full range of motion. Don't ego lift.
Exactly. He even provides this 5-step pre-lift preparation plan to help you get into the right position before each set.
It's like a checklist to ensure good form.
And the manual includes all these tables of exercises, categorized for different body parts, with notes on proper form.
That's super helpful.
He also explains his rating system, like how he rates exercises based on their overall mass building potential versus their ability to target specific muscles.
So you can choose the right exercises for your goals.
Exactly.
Now, what about cardio? That's always a big question for people who are trying to build muscle.
Yeah, there's this idea that cardio kills your gains.
Right. But Anderson doesn't completely dismiss cardio. He says that too much can hinder muscle growth because it increases your recovery needs. But he suggests that high-intensity interval training, or HIIT, done on your off days can actually be beneficial.
It can help you burn fat without interfering too much with your muscle growth.
And he even gives a sample 20-minute HIIT routine.
Basically, you alternate periods of high-intensity exercise with periods of low-intensity recovery.
So it's not like you're running on the treadmill for an hour straight.
No, it's short bursts of intense effort. It's a good way to keep your metabolism revved up and burn fat without overtraining.
Okay, let's move on to factor 5. Number of sets and repetitions. This is another area where people get really confused.
Yeah, there are so many different theories out there.
High reps, low reps, pyramids, drop sets, all that stuff. So what does Anderson recommend?
He says that low-rep heavyweight training is more for strength and power, like for powerlifters.
So not ideal for maximizing muscle size.
Right. He emphasizes the importance of getting that pump. You know, that feeling when your muscles are full and swollen?
Yeah, I know the pump.
He says that's a key indicator that you're stimulating muscle growth. And that typically happens when you're working in the 8-15 rep range.
So it's not just about lifting the heaviest weight possible.
Nope. It's about finding that sweet spot where you're challenging your muscles and getting that blood flowing.
He also mentions that the buildup of lactic acid during those higher rep sets can trigger the release of growth hormone.
So that burn you feel is actually a good thing. It's a sign that your muscles are working hard and stimulating growth.
And how does this tie back to the hyperadaptive cycling?
Well, during the progressive load phases, you gradually increase the number of sets you're doing for each exercise, and you push yourself to muscular failure.
So you're really pushing your limits.
Then, during the hyperadaptive cycle, you reduce the number of sets, and you stop a few reps short of failure.
So you're giving your body a chance to recover and overcompensate.
Exactly. He also cautions against using forced reps. When you have someone help you lift the weight past the point where you can do it on your own.
Yeah, I've seen people do that.
He says that can increase your risk of injury and actually prolong your recovery time.
Okay, that makes sense. Better to stay within your limits.
So, listen to your body.
All right, factor 6. Repetition speed. This is something I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to. They just move the weight up and down.
Yeah, but Anderson says that to maximize growth, you need to control the speed of your reps.
So you're not just going through the motions.
Right. He recommends an explosive 1-2 second concentric phase, which is the lifting part of the rep.
So you lift the weight powerfully.
Then a slow, controlled 4-second eccentric phase, which is the lowering part.
So you really resist the weight on the way down.
Exactly. That eccentric portion is super important for creating those micro tears in the muscle fibers that trigger growth.
So it's not just about how fast you can lift the weight, it's about how slowly you can lower it.
Yeah, you're maximizing the time under tension.
Yeah. Factor 7, rest cycles. This one's all about recovery, right?
Yep. He starts by reminding us that muscles don't actually grow while you're in the gym. They grow during the rest periods.
So the workouts are just the stimulus.
Right. You're basically sending your body a signal to adapt and grow. But the actual growth happens when you give your body time to repair and rebuild.
And that means getting enough sleep.
Absolutely. He emphasizes the importance of 7-8 hours of quality sleep every night. That's when growth hormone is released and muscle repair happens.
And what about the rest you take between sets during your workouts?
Well, he ties this back to the hyperadaptive cycling again.
Of course he does.
During the progressive load phases, you actually decrease the amount of rest you take between sets.
So you're putting more stress on your recovery systems.
Yeah, you're basically pushing your body to adapt. But then, during the hyperadaptive cycles, you significantly increase your rest periods.
So you can fully recover and then overcompensate.
It's all about strategically manipulating those rest periods to optimize your body's response to training.
Okay, finally we get to factor 8. Diet. The big one.
The one everyone wants to know about.
And Anderson says that all the hard work you put in at the gym won't matter if you don't fuel your body properly.
If you don't eat, you don't grow. It's as simple as that.
He even says that a lot of the common diet advice out there is pure BS.
He's not afraid to call it like he sees it.
So let's break it down. First, he explains the basics of macronutrients. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
The building blocks of nutrition.
He emphasizes that protein is the most important nutrient for muscle growth and repair.
He recommends about 1.14 grams of protein per pound of lean body weight during the high protein phases.
That's a lot of protein.
Yeah, but remember, we're trying to build muscle here. And he suggests splitting your meals into 5 or 6 smaller meals throughout the day.
So you're constantly feeding your muscles.
And he says it's especially important to get about 25% of your daily protein right after your workout.
To kickstart the recovery process.
Exactly. He also mentions that meal replacements and protein powders can be useful, especially for that post-workout shake.
Okay, so what about carbs?
He explains the difference between high glycemic carbs, which cause a quick spike in blood sugar, and low glycemic carbs, which provide more sustained energy.
And which ones are better for building muscle?
He recommends low glycemic carbs for most of the day, but there's one exception, right after your workout.
Oh, so high glycemic carbs are actually good post-workout.
They help replenish your muscle glycogen stores, which are depleted during your workout, and they can help prevent muscle breakdown.
And what about fats?
He's a big fan of healthy fats. The polyunsaturated omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, and monounsaturated fats.
I've heard those are good for you.
They're important for testosterone production, healthy cholesterol levels, and they can actually help reduce muscle breakdown. He even recommends about 30 grams of good fats post-workout.
To boost testosterone.
And to help with recovery.
Now, he gets really specific with the diet plans.
He provides detailed instructions on how to calculate your personalized calorie and macro needs based on your body weight, body fat percentage, and your goals.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach.
He gives examples for different goals: maintaining weight, losing weight, and gaining weight.
And he even provides guidance on how to distribute those macros across your meals, including post-workout timing.
For the protein deprivation phases, he focuses on foods like fruits, vegetables, water, nuts, oatmeal, and healthy oils.
So you're still eating real food.
And he gives practical tips, like using your hand to estimate portion sizes.
That's helpful.
He also talks about the importance of a weekly cheat day.
A day where you can eat whatever you want.
Yeah, psychological break. He recommends having it on your first off day and limiting alcohol consumption to that day.
Because alcohol can interfere with your recovery.
And he stresses the importance of drinking plenty of water.
A gallon a day.
Right, at least. It's crucial for nutrient transport, recovery, and preventing fluid retention.
And what about supplements?
He's cautious about supplements. He says that building a physique based on supplements can make you reliant on them, and that real muscle lasts.
So he's not saying supplements are bad, but they shouldn't be your foundation.
Exactly. But he does recommend a few real performers: creatine, acetyl-carnitine ALC, protein powders and meal replacements, liquid amino acid concentrate, a good multivitamin mineral antioxidant, and L-glutamine.
And he explains how and when to use each one.
So he gives you a balanced approach to supplementation.
Then he wraps everything up by summarizing the 14 optimum anabolic principles that we've discussed across these 8 factors.
It really ties everything together. Shows you how it all fits into a comprehensive system for building muscle naturally.
So to sum it all up, according to Anderson, building muscle naturally requires a much more strategic approach than most people realize.
It's not just about lifting weights and eating a lot of protein.
You have to consider all these interconnected factors, from your training intensity to your protein intake to your rest periods to your supplement choices.
It's about creating the right environment for your body to thrive and grow.
So what do you guys think? What are your main takeaways from this deep dive? What really stood out to you? You know, maybe you've been training a certain way for years and now you're realizing that you might need to make some changes. Or maybe you're inspired to try something new, like the hyperadaptive cycling or the protein deprivation. Or maybe you're just more confused than ever and you have a ton of questions. That's okay too. The important thing is to keep learning and experimenting and finding what works best for you.
And remember, building muscle naturally takes time and consistency. There's no magic pill. But if you follow a solid plan and you're patient, you can achieve amazing results.
So keep those questions coming, keep experimenting, and keep pushing yourselves. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.
Bye.